one of our struggles is because the church was brought here not by missionaries, but because of ethnic groups migrating to the United States. The Greeks and the Russians and the Antiochians and they all came to this country, and then when they got here a century ago, when immigration from Europe was at its high point, they felt the need for the church. So they sent back to their homelands for priests, for bishops to come, and that's how our church kind of came to this country. It wasn't, well, there were a couple missionary efforts taking place in the country and also in Alaska, but by and large the church was brought to the country by the early immigrants. And they brought the church that they knew from back home. So we have we have a very strange thing that occurred in this country is we have a dozen or so Orthodox churches that are ethnically tied back to their homelands, and it's probably the only time in history where we didn't have the local church evolving. We've been trying since the early 60s to have all these ethnic-based churches, Orthodox churches, work together in many activities. We have a social outreach program, other things that we do as a group. But administratively, we are independent of one another. Same faith and all, but we have our own bishops, we have our own structure, we function independently of each other. And there's been a movement for decades to try to have a common administrative structure. One, it's always been the way to do it. Secondly, it's much more efficient and cost-effective to have one administrative structure than to have a dozen administrative structures, and also to make it easier for us to do outreach to people. We have converts coming into the faith either because they're marrying our own parishioners, or because they're discovering the Orthodox Church. And so which church do they go to? Which of these ethnic churches? And again, there have been efforts over the decades to bridge that gap and to try to work toward that end. When will it happen? I'm not sure, because it's very difficult for people to give up what they have. I know stories someone told me years ago that that in his hometown there was no Greek Orthodox church, but there was a Russian Orthodox church, and he went to the Episcopal church because he didn't want to go to the Russian Orthodox church, which is the same faith as ours, but for some strange reason he felt not comfortable going to that church, but went to the Episcopal church, which is not exactly the same faith in dogma and doctrine and belief as the Russian church would be to us. So it tends to sometimes fall along ethnic lines that and I couldn't logically say, well, why wouldn't you go to the Russian church, because it's the same faith and you could take communion there and you could participate, and it just wasn't something that he would even have considered.